Before we begin, please note, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated organization. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. We encourage listeners to conduct their own research and consult with relevant professionals before making any business or career decisions. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Science Warriors, where we unveil the hidden architects of business transformation. I'm your host Adel Hameed, and today we're exploring a force that's disrupting industries and reimagining them entirely, Web3. Web3 and its revolutionary impact on how we work, collaborate, and build organizations is changing the world. However, before we start our interview with our guest today, Mr. Gokhan Polat, let's explore what Web3 is and how can we use it to our advantage as operating executives, whether you're working within an innovative corporation or within a startup environment. This information will be useful for us. Throughout history, technological leaps have fundamentally reshaped business operations. Each evolution has redefined how value is created and captured, from steam-powered engines to digital networks and the internet. Now Web3 stands as the next frontier, promising decentralization, transparency, and shared ownership in ways previously unimaginable. But beyond the buzzwords, what does this mean for operational leaders? How can we benefit from it? How can it transform our organization's efficiency, scalability, and competitive advantage? Decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, represent one of Web3's most transformative innovations. According to an HBR or a Harvard Business Review article titled "How DAOs Could Change the Way We Work," these structures are rewriting organizational playbooks by enabling contributors to participate in multiple projects simultaneously rather than committing to a single employer. This shift fundamentally alters how talent is deployed, how we as employers also hire people, how do we bring the right resources on board, the right talent on board, and how we automate the compensation process, and how do we get them engaged, and potentially eliminating layers of bureaucracy while giving contributors unprecedented control over their work, earnings, using tokens, token-based incentives. Now, that could mean multiple things. We won't get into tokens today, but tokens play a crucial role in how DAOs are transforming talent compensation through blockchain and cryptocurrencies. DAOs provide direct payment in tokens and implement vesting schedules to encourage long-term commitment. Encourages also transparency. Imagine yourself an artist that is working on a piece of work or contributing to a song, and then your compensation will be automatically calculated, automated, without you having to discuss any kind of terms or negotiate any kind of terms in the process. So it makes your life much easier. This applies to many industries, many sectors. Sharing profit to reward collective efforts is a key advantage of how DAOs work. Offer governance rights to empower the contributors. Additionally, they utilize compensation models such as bounties, grants, and reputation-based rewards. Reputation-based rewards could also represent or be represented by experience. It's the experience, the years of experience, or the number of projects you worked on. So all of that could contribute. The people that you worked with as well. So if you have, as an artist, you worked with very well-known names, of course your compensation will be different. These various approaches help DAOs attract and retain talent, foster a strong community, and achieve their shared goals. The creative economy stands to be equally transformed. And I gave you an example about artists, but also we'll dive deeper because it seems that the art industry has benefited the most out of DAOs. There is an article by Alex Tapscott that explores what Web3 has been doing to artists, and it's titled Web3 Could Change the Business Model of Creative Work. So content creators have long struggled with platform-dominated models that extract disproportionate value from their work, and Web3 introduces a paradigm shift through smart contracts and blockchain-based ownership. I can imagine even Netflix is probably a Web3 example, where, if I keep asking myself, if I watch a movie and I decide not to continue watching it after the first 20 minutes, who gets contributed? Who gets paid from from my monthly contribution? Which is like $5, $10, whatever package I'm on. And then we've got the millions of users around the world. How does that wealth get distributed to the content creators to keep them encouraged? So with blockchain-based ownership, creators can now capture perpetual royalties, ensuring compensation not just at the initial sale, but throughout the life cycle of their intellectual property. Projects like MV3, co-founded by Stranger Things writer Jesse Nixon Lopez, demonstrate how this model enables fans to participate in narrative development while sharing in the resulting IP. This is amazing. Being able to contribute to your favorite show, giving the writers ideas to contribute to the narrative, and then you earn some of that IP. You could see your name in the credits. I don't know whether they share any kind of contributions financially, but that could be also another thing. You could get a very tiny percentage of pay to that specific episode that you contributed to, creating entirely new value creation models. These aren't merely theoretical constructs. Real-world implementations are already reshaping industries. Consider another example, Opolis, a DAO-based employment cooperative that provides freelancers with benefits traditionally reserved for full-time employees. This includes healthcare, retirement plans, and more. And let's examine how independent game developers, or another example mentioned is how independent game developers in the Philippines are using NFTs to secure direct funding, bypassing traditional gatekeepers and retaining both creative control and financial upside. That means they're making more money and they don't need to deal with brokers or middle people or gatekeepers. So they have more freedom to learn and to earn. Even established enterprises are strategically engaging with Web3. In the article titled How Brands Are Experimenting with Web3, Anna Angelic documents how companies like Nike, Gucci, and Adidas are leveraging blockchain-based technologies and strategies to redefine customer relationships. For example, Nike's acquisition of Artifact Studios signals its commitment to blockchain-enabled fashion, while luxury houses like Gucci and Prada are pioneering tokenized loyalty programs that transform passive consumer into stakeholders in the digital ecosystem, or in a digital ecosystem. These initiatives represent more than experimental marketing. They're systematic approaches to reimagining customer engagement in the digital age. To navigate this complex landscape, I'm joined today by Gokhan Polat, a product strategist and Web3 expert whose experience spans venture building and decentralized business models. Having worked across fintech, healthcare, and emerging technology ecosystems, Gokhan brings practical insights into how organizations can harness Web3 to drive operational excellence and sustainable innovation. In this conversation, we'll move beyond theory to explore Web3's practical application, how decentralization transforms organizational capabilities, and what operational leaders like you and me need to know to position themselves advantageously in an evolving landscape. Whether you're scaling a startup, optimizing enterprise operations, or simply preparing for the future of work, This discussion will equip you with actionable insights into Web3's operational implications. Let's begin our exploration. Hi, Gokhan. Thank you so much for accepting the invite and for accepting to join us. Uh, Also, you've been part of the A8 Innovation Foundry and part of the consulting network. And today, A8 is partially sponsoring this podcast. I'd like to welcome you to
Thank
this
you.
podcast. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a casual discussion. I'd like to learn more about the topic, which is how do you use Web3? First, what is Web3? Why should
Yeah,
I
yeah.
care about it as an operating executive? And how does it impact operational excellence and scalability in an organization? And before that, we would like to know more about you, about who you are, why did you get into Web3 and crypto and all of these high tech topics that
Sure.
I've been for a long time ignorant of, but I eventually have to learn more about it. So please tell us
Sure.
more about yourself and what's your story.
Thanks for having me here. We've been, talking about having a session with you for some time, so it's good to kind of sit down and have that conversation. I appreciate the welcome. I can talk a bit about my background and what led me to working with the things that I do today. So I have been a kind of product guy, product manager for many, many years. Initially as part of something called MasterKey, which was a kind of a CRM property manager solution, a property management solution in this region, one of the early kind of tech companies in this region. I joined them at a time where there was not that many kind of technology companies around and was with them for quite a long time, learning a lot about how to manage products, how to build digital products, how to work with real estate agents who are utilizing these products. And eventually we took that company, we sold it into Dubizzle, so it became part of Dubizzle OLX for about 2 years. Take some of the technology we built within that, within kind of MasterKey and Airless into Dubizzle and a couple of different markets within Dubizzle. When I joined Dubizzle, I really started to learn about not just product management in a single team or in a single place, but actually product management at large scale. So instead of having a couple of squads of teams of tech teams, we went into having 40 different tech teams in different markets, different domains, verticals, cross-functional teams that are UX teams, and research teams, user research teams. So it was an eye-opening kind of way of looking at specialization and at scale development. While I did enjoy that, I was kind of craving for going back to the 0 to 1, which I felt like was my calling. From there, I joined a health tech company called Visita, and that was a really fascinating kind of fast-paced environment. Spent some time with them understanding how to kind of build the product discipline within Visita. Then joined another health tech company called Raya Care, which is trying to take healthcare from hospitals to homes, and that was a kind of operationally heavy startup because with Dubizzle and the previous examples, support essentially was operations for us, right? Hey, something is broken, a button isn't working, a user has an issue with a listing, let's go and fix it. Now we actually were discussing about nursing protocols, about standards for delivering healthcare. We're talking about operational scheduling of the staff, right? So it's really sort of an eye-opening way of looking at operations in that. And from there, I joined a company called Ogram, which was equally operations. This was trying to take staff from kind of part-time staff and deploy them to hotels and restaurants as peak time needs for these spaces, events. There we deployed about, I guess at that time was about 5,000 to 6,000 part-timers on a monthly basis, two different jobs. Really, again, continue to learn about operations, understanding, working with a couple of ex-Uber people actually that really taught me about how to think about operations at a scale up. And from there, I moved into a venture building world. So the idea of, well, now that you have a lot of this experience, now that you understand a couple of these domains, healthcare, prop tech, fintech, whatnot, how can you then do this at multiple startups at the same time, right? So I was part of something called We Build Ventures, where we have a shared resource team that is involved in the different companies. And within We Build Ventures, Keeper was the most successful story. Within that, I kind of rent now, pay later solution out there. And with that, I kind of started on the journey of venture building and eventually ended up in Web3 because I really wanted to understand, okay, what is next, right? So, you've done your startups, you've done your 0 to 1s, you've done different industries, you've done multiple startups at the same time, but it seems like the world is changing faster and faster in different ways. And it seems like, Web3 is going through this hype and then maturity cycle, and it's getting interesting. And AI is just going to accelerate everything, right? So I really want to jump into what is next and kind of left what I was doing at the time and to jump into that. So very briefly, the main involvement I have today is with RNDAO, which stands for Research and Development, DAO, Decentralized Organization, Autonomous Organization. And the whole idea is, well, how can we build certain behaviors, work structures around doing research well so that we can understand the segment and the target audience and the users well, and then be able to build something in a more decentralized way that eventually is more scalable than traditional ways. And at the same time can be more cost effective than traditional means of raising a lot of capital and then having to chase the next round of capital. So that's been a really interesting journey. And I learned a lot from diving deep into the underbelly of the Web3 ecosystem, some of the immense strength that Web3 teams and technologies have, but equally about some of the challenges in coordination, collaboration that still exist, but yet they're trying to solve for. And if they, if Web3 can solve for this at scale, I think it's going to have an impact on everything that we do going forward. So that's been the journey so far.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you for taking us through your evolution, the evolution of Gokhan over the years. One thing that you mentioned, I like the idea that you jumped and experimented between different sectors as well. And healthcare is like financial services to some extent. There are lots of compliance requirements, and you're dealing with sensitive data as well. So this is why I believe that all of this experience that you gained, I look at it as you got different intensity or intensity of requirements.
Mm-hmm.
When you're just doing it e-commerce and retail, it's much easier. You can experiment more. When you're doing it with healthcare, with financial services, with more regulated industries, it becomes more difficult to innovate, and because you have to hit multiple checkpoints. But going back to Web3 again,
Mm-hmm.
how does it help me as an operating executive, with my operation? Do I need to be in a specific sector to benefit the most from Web3, and what is Web3 as well?
Yeah. Look, I'm very happy to actually go into this. Like any new technology, it's actually not about the technology itself, but what it implies in terms of the world around us evolving. Okay. And I think just like AI, there's no denying that AI will impact the way that we operate, the way that we provide services, the way that we work together as a team. So will Web3 at some point, right? At any level, at any company, at any team or even students working together. The blockchain components around Web3 is the technology. But what you try to do in Web3 is really around the learning of it. So in essence, it is about decentralizing certain processes, work behaviors versus having everything be centralized. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Now, are you familiar with Hire, the Chinese white goods manufacturer? Are you familiar with that company?
No.
Hire is I don't know exactly how to say it, but it's HAIAR, so Hire.
Yeah. They do have electronics and TVs
Yes.
and yeah.
Yes, exactly. So they produce a lot of different white goods. Okay. Hire is the world's largest white goods producer. Hire is a decentralized organization. People actually don't know this. Hire runs in a way as a large corporation producing physical goods that is similar and actually is studied in Web3 circles. Now, if I give you some details of what they do, Hire has, last time I read this, was about 30 to 33 different divisions within Hire. Might be more today. And each sort of division is essentially a large team or component of teams that have their own P&L, that have their own hiring decisions, that make their own bets in terms of what kind of technologies they want to build and how to build them. And each team within Hire contracts with other teams within Hire to be able to work together. Nobody at the top of Hire basically says, oh, well, we need to invest X amount of resources into building the solution. Let's get half of the company centered around this. There's other examples of decentralized organizations that I've seen. When I was working for the essentially a kind of a startup within the Dubai government, the one that was called Gaia Care, we were studying actually healthcare models in other countries. And in particular, we had honed in on two different companies. One was called CR Care in UK. Another one was called Buurtzorg in Holland. And when we studied Buurtzorg, which is also one of the largest home healthcare companies, it might be the biggest one in the world, many different countries that they operate in, we just couldn't understand how Buurtzorg worked. Buurtzorg means neighborhood in Dutch. And their model is that they have about 50 to 60 people in the headquarters. And the other 10, or I guess it's now around 15,000 people that work for Buurtzorg, actually work in neighborhood offices. They are located in neighborhoods, and they serve certain neighborhoods when it comes to bringing healthcare services to home, nurse services, injections, wound care, different kind of services, and other sort of looking after elderly in different ways. They again do their own marketing in the neighborhood. They do their own hiring. They do their own conflict resolution. They have their own P&L within that particular neighborhood office. So all these things actually enable them to scale incredibly fast and be extremely profitable versus other centralized organizations who have a big chunk of, let's say, bureaucracy that needs to kind of service the different entities farther away from the center. So I'm giving these examples to show you that Web3 in of itself is the blockchain, Web3, the cryptocurrencies in of themselves is a technology. But actually understanding decentralization and the play that it has in the world that the technology enables is actually the real insight. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
amazing. This is really helpful because I remember there was a book, I forgot the name of the title of the book, but they were talking about ant swarms, like how ants actually interact with each other, how do they coordinate. And that was a way for us to understand how decentralization works when it comes to decision making. And the same thing with bees, the birds, and we learn from nature, and we've been applying them in our businesses as well. And having decentralized organizations, in addition to Hire as well, I've discovered Sony does the same thing. Many of these big groups, global groups, they operate in a similar manner, where each organization, they have their own profit and loss kind of mechanism, and they're free to. The policy, of course, dictates that they should work with each other, but also if the services are not up to par, then they're free to use an external party to
Exactly.
yeah. This is an excellent example. Yeah. So now, how does it work within the Web3? Is it like servers talking to each other? Is it like
Yeah.
how does it work?
Let me just do a side note. So the ants, the swarms, the flocks, there are different methodologies or different ways of describing Web3 that we all talk about all the time. I personally have a bit of a love and hate relationship with the idea of bee swarm because yes, in theory, it reflects the way that we work. I mean, RNDAO talks about swarming all the time, about collaptag and swarms, but it doesn't tell you the full picture also, right? The world is more complicated The world has other incentives, other people involved than a pure swarm model. But I know what you're getting to, and you're on the right path in terms of understanding the logic there. Now, when it comes to sort of understanding the technology, the component of this, and how that goes into decentralization and the way that these companies work, the key thing here is to understand that Web3 enables really three things. Like I call this coordination, collaboration, and compensation, which makes decentralizing a company or a way to do things, we make that a lot more efficient. So what does the coordination component mean? Well, the coordination component means is that when you have a mission to either bring money or collect money to help somebody or do some collective action, the coordination element of it is inherently better utilizing Web3 technologies. So the way that you are able to have all these communities is a very community-driven environment. We can spread the word, participate in these conversations very easily, get involved in DAOs, discussions, learn about these things. And actually, it's very easy to set up certain programs and actually ask for support from people. And when they start helping out, people already have certain roles, and there are certain technologies, what we call them hats as well. There's even something called a hats protocol that allows you to take on responsibilities as the coordination happens. Now, collaboration really means is that when two people get involved in a project, or 10 or 100 people get involved in a project, how do you actually align people's incentives in a way where we're working towards the same goal? Because ultimately, collaboration is about understanding expectation from different people getting involved and knowing what part of it that you're doing, what part of it that you're not doing, somebody else is taking on, and that they're aligned towards the same goal. This collaboration component is also way better with Web3 technologies. I'll give you one example here. Say you want to bring in an expert designer into your team at a corporate or even a startup environment. What do you need to do? Well, you need to think about what are the contracts that we need to sign with them. Are they going to be freelancers? Are they going to be paid based on the deliverable? Are they going to be based on the hour? How do we ensure that this is fair for us and for them? We need to give them access to a whole bunch of different solutions. What do we give them access to? What do we don't give them access to? How long are they going to be with us? So this component and the challenges around bringing people into teams is really done way better in Web3. The mechanisms at play, access, permissions, joining a project, leaving a project again, are so established, and technology support that it's way easier to actually collaborate on Web3 projects. Now, the third thing, which I think actually is the most powerful part of Web3 enabling decentralization, is the compensation part. You wouldn't believe the times where I'm involved in a particular discussion project, maybe a debate that we might have with some of the networks or blockchains, where I'm like, wow, this is really fascinating way of talking about compensation. Because the way that you get paid in traditional way is that you have a contractor, maybe you have something like Top Talent or other ways of hiring people, Fiverr, that you pay them over that and they get paid. And oftentimes they might actually have, if they from a third world country typically, or countries where banking is a bit less established, they might have real difficulty actually receiving the money. That is a non-issue in Web3 to a large extent, especially if everything is kept in Web3. It's a fast, cheap, incredibly efficient way of paying people. But it's not just about compensating people with value in their account, it's also the way you pay them. We can very easily do milestone payments in Web3. You complete a milestone that triggers a protocol that gets you paid because you delivered something very easily. Second milestone payment, set it up already beforehand. We can also do, which is sort of one of the latest ways of paying people, actually is called stream paying. So stream pay is the concept of taking it from streamers, online streamers who get donations, and they get donations every time they work and they do something. We actually have a couple of different projects that we are also involved in where the pay is streamed to them. Because the fee of the transaction is almost non-existent, but a lot of these new blockchains, because the ease of the contract expectation setting and the means for the outcome or the merit of the work they do, and the outcome can be quantifiable, we can actually pay people on an hourly basis, and they can hold those funds, go into their wallet, and they can see that and receive the funds in the wallet. So these things really enable for the idea of decentralizing components of the way we work, and make that a lot faster, a lot easier, a lot cheaper to do so.
This is amazing. Thank you for clarifying that. Now, I still have the question of what use cases, are there any examples today that we are, like Netflix, are they using Web3? And if yes, how are they using it? How does it work for them? And then the next question and the final question will be for me, I'm setting up a startup or I'm setting up a company or I'm building a product today. How can I start with Web3? So these are the two questions. So yeah.
They're
Back
very
to
good
you.
questions, and they're going to take a little while to explain, so I'll take the first part. I'll take the first part first. So Web3 companies and Web3 ecosystems are going through a crazy growth these days. And it's unnoticed. It's surprising to me how much the spotlight is on AI and none of it is on Web3. There's a little bit of it that comes up every now and then that I see my newsfeed. I mean, my newsfeed now is a bit more Web3 focused, but I'm surprised that nobody knows what's happening. There are two examples I can give you from when it comes to payments. So there's a company called Cello, or a network called Cello. Cello collaborated with Opera, the mobile browser, to really try to penetrate the African market for quick payments between like peer-to-peer payments, dollar-nominated payments that are not going through a currency in local currency that's very fluctuating. And they are essentially taking over payments in Africa. In many countries, they're probably the leading payments way of actual method of payments. Now, on the front end, it doesn't say Web3. Like, set up a wallet and go through this and save your key, whatever. The front end is very much a familiar Web2 front end. But the back end, all of this is actually possible because of the Web3 infrastructure, because of low transaction fees, because of easy ways of doing settlements across different accounts, different countries, different funds, everything being dollar denominated in funds, so they don't have to go through a local banking system. And that is an example where there is a genuine advantage of utilizing the Web3 as part of the product, and it's built into it without you knowing about it. So if you guys want to look up Cello Networks and what they do with the Opera system in Africa, it's an amazing case study.
Yeah, we'll share the link as well in the description for the audience.
Sure.
Please continue.
Sure.
Yeah.
So another example I'll give you is also related to payments, because this is currently the most sort of growing part of Web3, is that Telegram. So many people are familiar with Telegram. Some people use it a lot more than others. Maybe some people are not so more focused on kind of WhatsApp as their communication tool. Telegram launched the open network a couple of years ago now, and essentially is a token and network that is run on Telegram, and it's again a Web2 interface with Web3 behind it. So people actually don't know they're using necessarily blockchain technology and wallets and all the stuff. It's actually built into your account. The moment you create the Telegram account, you can with one click create a Web3 wallet. You can then go and engage with games, with apps, with all these different things using your Telegram wallet. Or you can add, if you're a bit more advanced, you can add other wallets in there and do some other things with it. But this is now the fastest growing, component of Telegram. The world, messaging app that was known for privacy has been growing all around the world for a long time. Because of that, their biggest bet today is actually a Web3 bet. Now, that is in payments and success in terms of the efficiency, quick transactions, reconciliation, cheap transaction fees of enabling payments and being able to do very small payments without even considering it, transactions between people. That also allows you to actually have financial literacy of actually what you can do. We used to thinking about that we put our money in the bank and then the bank can give us an interest, and for many people that interest simply is not attractive enough. And then you maybe want to invest in some stocks or invest in some other kind of traditional means of getting some yield from those funds you have with the bank. Web3 basically says to you, look, why is it that the bank should get a cut of this? Like, are they really doing that big of a job for you to simply remove, go take your funds and move it somewhere else, put it into a saving account with a central bank or other ways and get a significant cut of this? No, there's actually ways where you can do, it's called decentralized finance, where you can essentially stake your currency with people, with other entities, and be able to not only be tied to having the funds in an account for a long time, they may actually liquidate it or removed from that account, staking account, very easily. Everything is actually controlled by the protocols. So people talk about decentralized finance in many different ways, and there is a bit of a speculative element in here as well. But in the infrastructure, beyond the speculative element of decentralized finance, essentially banking is really going to change. I mean, this is 10 times better way where the user gets 50%, 100% more, sometimes double the yield from their funds in their account, and they are in control. So that's two examples.
Amazing. This is still, there is a lot for us to learn. At least for me, there is a lot to learn. But yeah, these examples they give. So you're basically saying that if we have a policy, and instead of getting people to be the decision makers on that policy, I can put it in a software in the cloud and enable the users to control the input, and then the output will be uh, basically factored in or runs through that system and then comes out consistently with the same fair results, applying the policy almost 100% accurately,
Yeah.
100% of the time. This is what you're
Look,
saying.
it's not almost 100%. It's
Yeah.
actually code. And compared to bank policies, you're somebody with the understanding can actually look at the contracts and
Yeah.
actually read what happens. And there is no way for us to manipulate contracts once they have been uploaded. You have to go through some ways of doing revisions, whatnot, of these contracts. But genuinely, it's way more transparent. It's what's called permissionless, meaning that given the right sort of onboarding KYC requirements that we have to make sure that these are right, the anti-money laundering requirements in there, given that it's fulfilled, that once you get access to this, you are essentially able to interact with this in a way where you can put the money in, get your yield, get the money out, whatever you want to do with it, without having in between bank that sort of control this. That's very true. And in some ways, you can also say that the people that are working in banks and are taking a lot of the manual requests to have to do some of these assessments one by one in typical ways, they no longer have to be paid. They no longer have to get big salaries from managing these funds in different ways. And that means that you can take that cost saving, actually give it back to the user, where some of it kept on the protocol end, DeFi company end, and some of it is given back to the user. If you know that things can be done easier, faster, cheaper, that in one way or another, it's a matter of time before that wins over a broader part of the world.
Amazing. Now this brings us to the last question in
Sure.
this interview, which is I'm a startup.
Yep.
How can I start with Web3? Where should I start? Let's say if I'm building an e-commerce platform,
Yep.
or I have a retail shop selling clothes. I know there are probably two different types of businesses, but what kind of questions should I ask, and where should I look for the answer?
I think those two different companies. So, first of all, if you are a retail shop and you want to provide, sell goods and to your audience, obviously you have to go where the market is. But if the market hasn't been converted into using Web3 wallets or ways of paying through Web3, then there is not that much of an incentive for you to go there. To make things interesting for retail audience or company owners, we have to make Web3 payments more possible, generally accepted and adopted, right? I think that's the one thing for them. Now, if a startup wanted to build something today and they wanted to, create a new company, pay the employees, get a strategy plan in place, I would argue that soon some of this stuff will actually be table stakes. So my idea is that in a couple of years, the way that you actually collaborate, coordinate, and compensate within startups will have elements of Web3 built into it. The way you register the company, the way you pay employees, the way you pay them in salaries versus in shares of the company, ESOP plans have to completely change as part of this. And the way that we pay for other services. I think with startups, the key thing is that how do you best spend the limited amount of funds you have to get the most benefit out of it? And it's really all about minimizing cost and maximizing benefit as a result of those engagements. So I think there's a lot of things we can learn from Web3 when it comes to employing people and using those things.
This is excellent, helpful. Now, there is a question that I know this is the second episode, Science Warriors, but we'd like to continue asking all of our guests. So if 50 years from now, people remember you, what do you want them to remember you by?
50 years. Okay, it's a long time in the future. I think whether it's 50 years or it's a team that I recently left, I think it's the same thing. I mean, it's ultimately that I want people to remember that they had somebody on the team, whether it was their manager, their lead, or part of the team as they work with them, that somebody showed up to work, right? Somebody showed up to do something meaningful with them and perhaps push them, perhaps help them, coach them to do some meaningful work that they can look back on this at some point in the future and think positively about it, right? Think fondly about it. I think that's kind of what I strive to with anything. If you want to think about a particular concrete example of how I want to sort of maybe have a small kind of imprint in the world in certain ways, I really hope that the companies and startups that I was a part of was part of a meaningful change in the world where we do things better, cheaper, faster. I as a product guy, I think the main thing is that you want to be able to have some impact, right? I'll give you one example that I was early on actually taught me about this lesson. Master Key days, in my earlier days as product manager, Better Homes was our biggest customer. I walked into the main office of Better Homes where there was about 150 agents, all on their computers, on their phones, calling people, negotiating, discussing things. And on every single screen was MasterKey, the software that I was part of building, right? And I could see them, observe them, click through the dialogues, click through the different flows, do things with it, and do that in a certain way of like, wow, these guys actually know how to, go through this quite fast, and they do certain things. And wow, this is not just one person, but it's 100 people. And that just felt me like, wow, I have an impact here. I'm part of a team that is building something that is being used in this scale. And that visceral observation of that was really fascinating. So I want people to have that level of being proud of what you build, and be able to think about that fondly.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Gokhan, for giving us the time and joining us and taking us through what Web3 is. I still have lots of questions, honestly, but we'll leave it for another day.
Sure.
Probably we'll invite you back. Most likely we'll invite you back
Sounds
again,
good.
sometime. Now, for people that would like to learn more about what you do and about you, where should they go?
So the primary place today is probably going to be LinkedIn. So if you look for Gokhan Polat on LinkedIn, that's the primary place that I try to share about the things that I learn and the things that I find interesting for others to learn as well. Other than that, I would encourage people to go onto A8's website and try to understand what we do, what we try to do in terms of bringing some of this learnings from startups and some of these crazy environments into kind of SMEs and helping them change and adopt and be better at what they do in a world that's going to be more competitive. So I think that's also a great source to come and learn about what I do and what we do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Adel. Thanks, yes. All right. Bye-bye.
That concludes our deep dive into Web3 and its transformative potential for organizational design and operational excellence. I want to extend my sincere appreciation to Gokhan Polat for sharing his expertise and illuminating the practical applications of these emerging technologies. As for our science warriors community, the operational leaders, innovators, and hidden architects of business transformation, I encourage you to consider how these decentralized models might enhance your operational capabilities and the organizational efficiency. The resources we've discussed, including the articles, Gokhan's insights, will be useful for you, and they're an excellent starting point to explore things further. The episode description includes links to Gokhan's LinkedIn profile and additional Web3 resources which we discussed earlier in this episode. If you found value in today's conversation, please subscribe to Science Warriors and share this episode with your fellow operational leaders in your network. I would like also to hear your comments, your views, recommendations, and feel free to suggest any guests that you would like us to interview in our future episodes. As we conclude, I invite you to reflect on one key question. How might decentralized technologies enhance your operational or your organization's operational capabilities and efficiencies? Consider experimenting with a tiny application of Web3 principles in your workflows this week. Even if it's just simply exploring how publishing certain documents or making documents transparent within a specific team might improve your decision-making process and the accuracy of those decisions. Thank you all for joining us today, and remember, while CEOs may command the spotlight, it's the strategic architects behind the scenes, the true science warriors like you, who engineer sustainable success through methodical innovation and operational excellence. Until next time, this is your host, Adel Hameed, reminding you that behind every market breakthrough, there is a science warrior making it possible. Push the boundaries, aim for excellence, even in minor incremental improvements. And remember, success isn't just about vision, it's about execution. Until next time.